number of issues pertaining to our country, how our country is moving, and how we can help move this. For 2021 to 2026, and also our checks and balances on the UPND administration. And under this, a number of issues are going to be discussed, and we'll give you an opportunity also as the media to be able to ask us questions and maybe get some clarifications on certain matters concerning the topics which will be discussed. We will also be touching an issue of our page, the President page, which has been hacked, taken over by some people, and so that will be addressed also in the course of this press briefing. So at this stage, without wasting much of your time, I'll call upon the party president to address the media. Mr. President.
Thank you, Vip, and a very good morning to everybody once again. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, of course, we thank you very much for according us this opportunity to talk to the Zambian people through yourselves. We have a number of issues that we are going to discuss this morning, but we'll keep it short. We do remember that the last time you attended a press briefing somewhere where we won't mention, you spent about 5 hours there. We don't want to do the same. We've got 4 key issues that we wish to talk about this morning, and I'll quickly run through these issues before we go into them in detail. The first issue is the PEP strategic plan for the period 2021 to 2026. And the second issue is the checks and balances on the UPND administration that our party has been providing and which it will continue to provide going forward. The third key issue is with regard to our Facebook page, which was hacked and has been out of our possession for the past 2 weeks or so. And of course, the last issue is our expectations from the 2022 national budget, which we understand might be delivered to Parliament this Friday. That is yet to be confirmed. So coming to the first issue, I think we are all aware that our performance as a party was below expectation in the last general election, and subsequent to that, we decided to dissolve all our structures and reconstitute them so that we can have more stronger interim structures as we head towards 2026. The plan of the party is to hold internal elections in November next year, at which point the people who are holding interim positions can either stand for substantive positions or they can aspire for other positions. And in this regard, we are very hopeful that with building stronger structures on the ground, it will help with the performance of our party going forward. Because when we did a post-mortem of our below expected performance, we noted that the major cause was that we had weak structures on the ground. So that is our plan going forward to 2026. And we are hopeful that that will help to turn around the fortunes of our political party. Coming to the second issue, which is the checks and balances on the UPND administration, I want to emphasize here about the use of the word administration. We are not saying UPND government, we are saying UPND administration. The reason for that is because when a party goes to government, they do not own or possess that government. There is only the Zambian government, which has been there since 1964. Each and every political party that forms government is only there to administer the affairs of the nation. And so I would also want to appeal to all citizens not to refer to any government as a UPND government, but rather as a UPND administration. This will help change the mindset of both the ruling party as well as citizens, so that no one should feel that when they are elected to manage the affairs of a nation, they own the government. The government remains the government of Zambia. The first item that we wish to talk about with regards to the UPND administration is the issue of the contraction of the World Bank loan, which was announced by the Minister of Finance in Parliament, in which he said he is going to use that loan to build schools. We noted that this contraction of debt was done without parliamentary approval, despite the assurances that the UPND administration and President Hakainde Hichilema made while they were in opposition, that they are going to comply with the laws of the land when it comes to getting parliamentary approval before contracting national debt. You might wish to note that it is very critical for Parliament to approve debt, national debt, for a number of reasons. But most paramount is the need to ensure that when debt is contracted, it is contracted on favorable terms to the nation and also for the right purpose. The proceeds of that debt is going to be used for the right purpose. And that can only happen if the contracting of national debt is subjected to parliamentary debate. So by not getting parliamentary approval, President Hakainde Hichilema and the UPND administration are depriving this nation of ascertaining that that debt is being contracted on favorable terms to the nation, and also that the debt is going to be used for the right purpose. So we really find that regrettable. And we wish to urge the UPND administration going forward to ensure that they comply with the laws of the land, including the Constitution. The second item under checks and balances is the failure by the UPND administration to purchase maize from farmers. We are aware that the UPND administration only came into office about 1.5 months ago now, but there are certain things which are urgent and they require to be attended to immediately, even if you are a new government. And one of those issues is the delivery of empty grain bags to farmers, as well as the purchase of the maize from farmers and the payment of farmers who have sold the maize to FRA. We all know that the Food Reserve Agency is an agency of government. It is an extension of government. What we expected as a party was that the moment President Hakainde Hichilema heard that there are a lot of complaints across the nation about failure by FRA to purchase maize, he should have gotten on the ground. That is what a pragmatic leader does. He should have taken a trip and gone to FRA, sat down the management of FRA, and asked them what challenges they are facing, which has brought about their failure to deliver empty grain bags and also purchase maize from farmers. That is what a pragmatic leader does. You cannot just sit there in State House. You are hearing complaints from farmers, and you know that farmers put in a lot of sweat in producing the maize that they have produced, which is now being destroyed by rains. So we wish to call upon President Hakainde Hichilema to get on the ground, to leave the comfort of his State House, where he is working from, and Community House, where he is residing, to leave the comfort of his premises and get on the ground. Go to FRA and listen to FRA management, what challenges they are facing. Most of the time you find that these challenges are small. They can easily be dealt with. And him as president should be pragmatic. He should attend to that, because we cannot allow our farmers and their maize to go to waste. That is totally unacceptable. So that is our appeal to the Republican president, and we are hopeful that he is going to heed our appeal. The third item that we wish to talk about this morning under the heading of checks and balances is the failure by the UPND administration to reintroduce meal allowances to students. We find that extremely regrettable, and we feel that despite the fact that the UPND administration has been in office for only 1.5 months, that is one of the priorities that the president should have attended to. We all know and we are all aware that even if a student is attending class, most of these students actually come from underprivileged homes. They barely afford to be able to raise transport money to go to campus, to go to college. So even if they are attending class, if they do not have meal allowances, it is difficult for these students to really be progressive in class and be able to achieve the objectives of their courses and pass and graduate if they do not have food in their stomach, if they do not have money to buy food. So that is why we expected President Hakainde Hichilema to attend to the issue of student meal allowances immediately as a matter of urgency. I, for one, I came from a very poor family. When I passed to go to university, I had to ask from a lot of my relatives just to raise money for transport, just for transport. And my story echoes with a lot of other people who graduated. I'm sure if you interrogated President Hakainde Hichilema himself and asked him how much money he had when he was going to University of Zambia, his story will obviously be similar to my story. We literally had to approach a lot of relatives just to raise transport money. Now, can you imagine someone who is struggling to raise transport money to go to university? Would they have money to buy food at university? The answer is no. And all we are asking the president is that, can he please reintroduce meal allowances to students as a matter of urgency? Because we are destroying the futures of our young people, our youth, by not providing them with meal allowances. So that is our appeal to the president, and we are hopeful that he is going to attend to it without excuses. I know that when you don't want to do something, you can never be short of an excuse. You can either say, this is not our budget, it's a PF budget. You can either say, no, we are attending to other urgent matters. But the bottom line is that the issue of student meal allowances is urgent, it is important, it is critical, and it needs to be addressed now. Not tomorrow, not the other day, but now. So that is our appeal to President Hakainde Hichilema. The fourth issue that we wish to address under the heading of checks and balances is the contracting of the International Monetary Fund bailout loan without any justification by economic indicators. We are fully aware that the IMF loan has not yet been signed. It has not yet been formally signed, but we are fully aware that the UPND administration in general and President Hakainde Hichilema in particular have given the go-ahead to get the loan, the IMF bailout loan. And we are also fully aware that there are steps that have been taken, including the visit by the IMF to Zambia, to further the process of acquiring that loan. And what we are saying, and what we've been saying, not only under the UPND administration, but even when the PF was in power, what we have consistently said is that this country, in terms of its economic indicators, does not require to get a bailout loan. It does not. A bailout loan from the International Monetary Fund is normally acquired for two critical purposes. Number one, for balance of payment support. And number two, for fiscal support. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen of the media, as well as citizens who are out there listening to this press briefing, for me to explain a little bit in detail what balance of payment support is and what fiscal support is. Balance of payment support is simply a situation whereby a country is importing more than it is exporting. And we all know that when we import, we need to pay using Forex or US dollars, which is the most common type of Forex. We need US dollars to pay for our imports. So Zambia needs to import various things such as fuel, such as you know, a lot of things we find in shops which we don't manufacture locally. And we also export. We also export mostly minerals, copper in particular, as well as cobalt. Now, when you look at Zambia's balance of payment position, which is a comparison of our exports versus our imports, you realize that from the years 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019, we were in a deficit, which means we were importing more than we were exporting, which means we needed balance of payment support at that time. But in 2020 as well as 2021 to date, we are in a surplus, which means we are exporting more than we are importing. We've got surplus forex. And the reason for that, which I can attribute to that development, is the increase in copper prices, which is our major export. Over the past 18 months or so, copper prices have almost doubled on the world market. And that is primarily because of the advent of electric vehicles. A lot of countries are moving towards electric vehicles, and copper is a major input in the manufacture of electric vehicles. So we are benefiting from that fact. And when you look at the global trend, you realize that the movement towards manufacturing of electric vehicles is going to continue for a very long time to come, until all these vehicles which use petrol and diesel are replaced, because the world is going towards the green approach, where you want less emissions from exhaust and the like. So our prices for copper are going to remain stable, if not continue rising, for the unforeseeable future, for a lot of years to come. So which means that our balance of payment position as a nation, which is basically a comparison of our exports versus our imports, is going to remain positive for a very long time. You understand? That is the first reason why a country would go on an IMF program, why a country would go and get an IMF bailout loan. I'll go to the second reason, which is fiscal support. A country will need an IMF bailout loan when it needs fiscal support. Fiscal support simply means you have a situation whereby, as a government, you are not able to generate enough revenues to meet your expenditure obligations. You are failing to pay salaries of your civil servants, you are failing to pay your suppliers, and things like that. When you reach such a situation, it means that you have a fiscal deficit, and therefore you might need the IMF to lend you money so that you can meet your expenditure obligations. Now, when you look at the performance of our revenue collection, this year in particular, you realize that the Zambia Revenue Authority, under the leadership of Mr. Kingsley Chanda, was able to meet the annual target by the end of August. The annual target of about 60 billion kwacha by end of August, which means we still had 4 months to go after meeting the target. By the end of this year, chances are that we would have exceeded the target by more than 50%. So clearly, in terms of revenue collection, in terms of government having money in the coffers to pay salaries and the like, we are doing well. We are doing very well. I don't know of any country in the world this year under COVID, with all the economic challenges of COVID, that has been able to meet their revenue collection targets for the entire year by end of August. I don't know. If anybody knows, they can share that information with us. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is that this year, as well as projected next year, we are recording a fiscal surplus. And when you have a fiscal surplus and you've got a balance of payment surplus, there's no justification why anybody would actually want to go and borrow money to the IMF. When you look at the IMF loan, it is specifically called a bailout loan. And we all know that only a person who is in trouble needs to be bailed out, isn't it? We all know that only a person who is in trouble needs to be bailed out. If you are not in trouble, if you have recorded a balance of payment surplus and you are projected to keep recording a balance of payment surplus for the foreseeable future, you are recording a fiscal surplus and you are projected to keep recording a fiscal surplus for the foreseeable future, it means you are not in trouble. It means you do not need an IMF bailout loan. It means you don't need to be bailed out. You do not need to be bailed out. So that is why we are saying that when you look at the decision by President Hakainde Hichilema to put Zambia on an IMF bailout loan, that decision was made even before he put together his cabinet. A decision like that needed wide consultation. The president needed to have first put in place his cabinet, and that decision should have come as a proposal from the Minister of Finance, tabled to cabinet, and cabinet is able to deliberate on it, and then you take it out to key stakeholders in the nation. You convene stakeholder meetings with trade associations, such as the Zambia Association of Manufacturers, such as the Zambia Association of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, ZACI, such as the Bankers Association of Zambia, professional associations such as the Zambia Institute of Chartered Accountants, the Law Association of Zambia, the Bankers Institute of Zambia. You convene them and you hear their submissions. What are their views? What are the views of these independent bodies regarding the country's decision to go the IMF route, to go and get an IMF bailout package? What are their submissions? And then after you've consulted widely, that is when the president would have sat and announced to say, we as a government have decided to get an IMF bailout loan. You cannot have a situation like what happened, whereby the president is inaugurated and 2 days later, without cabinet in place, without any consultation with anybody, he announces that we are going to get an IMF bailout loan. You can't have such a situation unless there are certain hidden motives. Unless there are certain hidden motives. So our expectation is that for something as critical as getting an IMF loan, because when you talk about an IMF loan, it comes with a lot of conditions which affect all the people of this country. It is not like any other loan, like maybe a loan from China, where they give you the money and they don't care how you use the money, they just want their money to be paid back. When you get an IMF loan, you need to comply with certain conditions. And those conditions include an employment freeze. We've already seen an instruction from Secretary to Cabinet that no one should be hired in the civil service. That is an employment freeze. You've got a wage freeze, where people's salaries are frozen maybe for a period of up to 5 years. You've got issues such as increasing electricity tariffs. We've heard the president hint to that. You are talking about issues such as increase in fuel prices. We've heard the president hint to that. So all those are things which will directly affect Zambians, wherever they are, whichever corner of the country they are, it will directly affect them. And the expectation is that for a properly run government, before you make a decision which is going to directly affect each and every citizen, you need to consult widely. You might still come back to the same decision, but you need to consult widely. You need to listen to what other people have to say about your proposed decision, which is going to affect the majority of Zambians. And our submission today is that President Hakainde Hichilema failed to consult widely. He even failed to consult from his own cabinet, because by the time he announced that he's going to go the IMF route, his cabinet was not even constituted yet. And in that regard, on that basis, we wish to appeal to the president, as we hereby do, to consider suspending any further talks with regard to contracting the IMF loan. We are appealing to the president to restart the process if he still wishes to contract the IMF loan. And restarting that process should begin with engaging key stakeholders. When you are president of a nation, yes, you are the #1 citizen in terms of decision making, but you need to consult other citizens as well. So we are appealing to the president to restart the process of contracting the IMF loan and he needs to restart it by consulting widely, consulting the various key stakeholders in this country, including the church and traditional leaders. That is our submission on the issue of the International Monetary Fund. We go to the fifth item under the banner of checks and balances, which is the breakdown in the rule of law due to undermining of the Zambia Police Service. Breakdown in the rule of law due to undermining of the Zambia Police Service by the government. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, citizens at large, we noted with a lot of disappointment the statement that was issued by the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs about 2 weeks ago now, whereby he instructed the police to suspend all checkpoints and all roadblocks except for a few checkpoints when you are entering major cities. And first of all, the source of our disappointment, before we come to the substance, is the manner in which this announcement was made. We all know that in order to maintain law and order, there is need for citizens to respect the police. And the police cannot be respected if a senior government minister is seen undermining them. The Honorable Minister of Home Affairs used a lot of disparaging language when announcing his decision. He said he's not going to tolerate a situation whereby when the police are blocked, they go and mount a roadblock to make money for themselves. We are all aware and we are all agreeable that there are certain pockets of corruption within the Zambia Police Service, just like any big organization. When you go to any big organization, including the church, you find that there are certain few corrupt individuals within that organization. That is what makes up society. Some are faithful, some have integrity, others don't. So for the Minister of Finance to undermine the entire Zambia Police Service simply because of a few elements within the Zambia Police Service was totally unacceptable. Even if the minister wanted to announce any decision regarding roadblocks, he was supposed to engage the Zambia Police Service Command and agree with them, and that announcement was supposed to come from the Zambia Police Service itself, as opposed to the decision to suspend checkpoints and roadblocks coming from a minister in the middle of disparaging language against the police. The total effect of that statement from Honorable Jack Nimbo, ladies and gentlemen, is that the authority of the Zambia Police Service, the authority of each and every man and woman in uniform has been significantly undermined. Whenever a police officer is even attending to a road traffic accident by the side of the road, when people are passing in buses, they will be shouting and insulting that police officer, saying that you understand? Why? Because the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, instead of building the respect and integrity towards the Zambia Police Service, decided to undermine the Zambia Police Service in general and the men and women in uniform in particular. You do not govern a country like that. You do not govern a country like that. If you are going to properly govern a country, you need to respect the people in whom you've bestowed authority. And in our case, it is the Zambia Police Service. Now, coming to the substance of the decision to suspend those checkpoints and roadblocks, our view is that the minister should have worked hand in hand with the Zambia Police Service to ensure that these checkpoints and roadblocks are done in a manner that reduces congestion on the road. Because the biggest issue that motorists have is the congestion which is caused whenever a road checkpoint or roadblock is mounted. So if they can come up with mechanisms to reduce road congestion, then the checkpoints are necessary, they need to be there. Because if you do not have checkpoints, if the police are not checking the roads which are moving on the road, then all sorts of vehicles will be moving on the road. That is number one. Vehicles which are not roadworthy, vehicles which are causing road traffic accidents. Already we are aware of 9 people who died about 2 days ago near 6 miles there when a tipper truck lost control and went to hit into a Rosa bus. And we were just reading some reports to say that vehicle, after being examined, was not roadworthy. We are not aware of exactly what made it unroadworthy, but we are told it wasn't roadworthy. So chances are that it might not have the appropriate brakes or anything to that effect. And if that person had been able to pass through a checkpoint, those things might have been identified and addressed. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is that we need law and order. We need traffic checkpoints. Only that they need to be done in a sober manner, which ensures that there is no congestion on the road, and which is done in a manner whereby there is no corruption involved by the police when mounting those checkpoints. But the checkpoints need to be there. There is no question about it. So that is our submission on the issue of the breakdown in the rule of law due to the UPND administration's undermining of the Zambia Police Service through the Minister of Home Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to go to the 6th item under the banner of checks and balances, which is the unreasonable enforcement of a 20% withholding tax on betting winnings, online betting winnings. We find this extremely regrettable. We find this extremely disappointing because when you look at the concept of taxation, when you look at the entire concept of tax, tax is supposed to be fair and equitable. It is supposed to be fair and equitable. Wherever you go in the world, that is the underlying principle of taxation. It must be fair and equitable. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the media, tell me what is fair and equitable about this young person or this elderly person who buys an online ticket and loses. He buys another online ticket and loses. He buys 10 online tickets and loses, spending 1,000 kwacha. And then on the 11th online ticket that he buys, he wins a 200 kwacha. So on that particular day, he has spent 1,000 kwacha and he has gained 200 kwacha. And then on that 200 kwacha which he has won, the government wants to get 40 kwacha. How fair and how equitable is that? The answer to that is that it is not fair and it is not equitable. It is not fair and it is not equitable because taxation is supposed to be based on the gains that someone makes and not the losses. That is why even a company, including the big companies, the mines, before you tax the mine, they will look at how much money they've generated by sales, and then they will deduct the expenses they've incurred, the salaries, the buying fuel, the this and that. They will deduct all that from the sales. And whatever remains, if it is positive, that is what the government taxes. What remains? The positive surplus that remains. So if the government is that fair and equitable to big corporations like the mines, then why should they tax an individual whereby they don't care how much the individual has put in terms of buying tickets? They just want to tax whatever amount the individual wins. Even if the net position of the individual is a deficit, it is a minus. That is number one. Because when you look at it from a fairness point of view, even employees who are in formal employment, we are all aware that every month they are given 4,000 kwacha tax-free, isn't it? 4,000 kwacha tax-free, people who are employed. Now, a person who is unemployed, who goes to do online betting and wins 500 kwacha, the only 500 kwacha that that person has won in that month, he is being taxed how much on it? 100 kwacha. Meanwhile, the person who is in formal employment, the government gives him a free way up to 4,000 kwacha in a month. How fair is that? Already, this person who is online betting is doing it because they don't have a job. And you want to punish them further compared to the person who is in formal employment. How fair is that? The answer is that it is grossly unfair. Also, when you look at it from a compliance point of view, at the moment, gambling is being done legally. You can see a lot of online gambling shops around, isn't it? It is being done legally, which means the Zambia Revenue Authority and the government through ZRA is able to collect money from those companies because it is legal. You understand? What will happen is that if government continues with this unreasonable tax, whereby they are taxing the owners of the companies and also taxing those who win, what will happen is that gambling in this country will go underground. It will not be seen, which means government will not be able to correct any single way because people will be doing gambling secretly. So what is the benefit of that, even to the government itself? There's no benefit. The argument that this law was enacted under the previous administration doesn't hold water because the previous administration enacted this law in 2014 but suspended its implementation pending further consultation and possible amendment. The current UPND administration came on board and without consulting anybody decided to just go ahead and implement a law that has been suspended for almost 5 years. If we were dealing with a competent government, the first thing you do is to ask and say, why has this law not been implemented all these years? So that you can benefit from the advice you are given as to the reasons why the law has not been implemented. If President Hakainde Hichilema and his cabinet had done that consultation, he would have been advised accordingly and he would have avoided this unreasonable 20% tax. He would have avoided this unreasonable 20% tax, which comes back to our earlier argument about the need for wider consultation before you make any critical decision as a government. You need to consult. You should never assume that you have a monopoly of knowledge and wisdom. Nobody has a monopoly of knowledge and wisdom. No matter how internally intelligent you feel, you do not have a monopoly of knowledge and wisdom. Hence the need to consult widely every time before you make an important national decision. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, our appeal to the UPND administration in general and President Hakainde Hichilema in particular is that they should suspend the 20% withholding tax on betting winnings immediately, pending further consultation. They should suspend it immediately because it is grossly unfair to the unemployed people who win 500 kwacha, which is the only winning in a month, and yet the government wants to get 100 kwacha of that. And yet employees who are in the formal sector go away with up to 4,000 kwacha tax-free. We are all equal as citizens before the law, before the government, and each one of us must be treated fairly and equitably without any favoritism. So far, President Hakainde Hichilema is punishing the unemployed instead of giving them employment, or at the most ignoring them. He is going after them and punishing them, which is totally unacceptable. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to go to item number 7 under the banner of checks and balances. This is an item regarding the excuses that are being given regarding the promised sale of the presidential jet. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, if you remember our argument when we were still under the previous administration regarding this presidential jet, our argument was that this jet was too expensive. We were not saying that the president does not deserve a jet. The president deserves a jet so that he can move conveniently from one place to another without using a commercial airline. But such a jet should be reasonably priced. When you look at this Gulfstream G650 private jet, it costs in excess of $160 million. And our argument is that when, for example, you look at the president of Botswana, Mr. Masisi, he recently bought a private jet, an ATR-42, which is bigger in size compared to the Gulfstream. And he bought it for about $15 million. It is a brand new jet. It is reliable. He uses it to travel wherever he wants to go across the world. So President Hakainde Hichilema needs a jet, no question about it, but he doesn't need a top-of-the-range jet like a Gulfstream, which is more than 10 times the price of an average acceptable jet, like an ATR. So that is our submission. So our appeal on this particular matter to President Hakainde Hichilema is that he should stop giving excuses when it comes to selling this jet. Excuses such as, we'll table this matter before cabinet, we'll table this matter before parliament. We all know that President Hichilema controls cabinet. We all know that President Hichilema controls parliament through his members of parliament. So President Hichilema should not hide behind these institutions such as cabinet or parliament and say, we'll table the matter there and we'll hear what they decide. He's being untruthful to the Zambian people. He's being untruthful to the Zambian people. And we want a honest president, not a president who believes that he can play with the minds of the Zambian people by appearing to distance himself from the decision, such that when cabinet decides to say, no, keep the jet, Mr. President, or parliament votes to say, keep the jet, Mr. President, then HH comes back and say, look, me, I didn't have anything to do with it. It was cabinet. Look, I didn't have anything to do with it. It was parliament. We don't want such a dishonest president. We want someone who can take responsibility. And the decision to sell the jet is for the president to make, not cabinet, not parliament. We want to make it very clear. And in this regard, we are appealing to President Hakainde Hichilema to sell the Gulfstream private jet immediately and proceed to acquire for himself another private jet which is reasonably priced. If he is not sure about what jet to use, he can pick up a phone and make a call to his counterpart in Botswana, President Masisi, and he can have a look at the jet that President Masisi uses to fly around before the supporters of the president come and say, no, a president can't use a cheaper plane. There are other presidents in the region, including the Angolan president, if I'm not mistaken. They all fly using an ATR-42. So we want the president to sell the expensive private jet, buy a more reasonably priced jet so that he doesn't use commercial, but he is flying in a reasonably priced jet. That is what we want. That is our appeal to the president. And we also appeal to the president to stop hiding behind cabinet or parliament. It's his decision to make. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to go to item number 8 under the banner of checks and balances, which is the failure to deliver farming inputs on time. Failure to deliver farming inputs on time. We all know that agriculture is a major employer in this country. We all know that. We all know that our relatives in the villages, they are far-flung. Shangombo, Kaputa, Vubwi, they rely on agriculture as a source of income. When they farm, they sell to FRA, they get some money, so that even that trousers which was torn during the year, they can take it to the tailor now and patch it. That is their only source of income. Most of us here have a monthly income. Every month end, an SMS comes to our phone, your account has been credited. The people out there, the majority of Zambians, don't have any such privilege as we do here. They rely on farming. So if you have a reasonable government, they need to attach the appropriate level of importance to an activity such as farming. And so far, this is October. The farming inputs should have started being distributed already, but we haven't seen anything on the ground yet. We haven't seen anything on the ground yet. And we want to remind the UPND administration in general and President Hakainde Hichilema in particular, in case they've been sleeping, to wake up from their slumber and ensure that farming inputs are distributed immediately. Otherwise, he is only going to be further increasing the levels of poverty in this country, because the majority of our people are not in formal employment. They rely on subsistence farming as a source of income. So their only source of income must be respected. And the only way to respect the only source of income for the majority of our Zambian citizens is to deliver farming inputs on time. The president should not have any excuses that he's only been in office for 1.5 months. There are certain things which you prioritize. Certain things you prioritize. Certain things that cannot wait for you to settle in 6 months or 1 year or whatever time the president wants for him to be considered settled in. There are certain things that require immediate attention, and supply of farming inputs is one such thing. So that is our appeal to the government. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to go to the 9th item under the banner of checks and balances, which is appointment of incompetent cabinet ministers. These include the Ministers of Information and Broadcasting, the Minister of Mining, the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Sports, the Minister of Local Government, as well as the Minister of Home Affairs. We'll go into the details why we've made the conclusion that these people are incompetent and not suitable for the positions that they occupy. We'll start with the Minister of Information. The Minister of Information. Actually, our observation is that so far, each and every UPND administration minister, the first time that they open their mouth, it is usually a disaster. They say a lot of wrong things. We don't know whether they didn't go through the necessary orientation. We are not sure. When you look at the Minister of Information, who represents government, and you look at her first press briefing, he dedicated about 70% of the entire press briefing to an individual, Mr. Lafeo Nakachinda. How do you as government dedicate your entire 70% of your press briefing to an individual? As a government, you are supposed to be looking at the bigger picture, the nation, not trying to address individuals in a national address. So on that basis, we made the conclusion that the Minister of Information is the wrong person for the job. And the area that President Hakainde Hichilema replaces her, the better. And when he does that, he will be doing himself a favor. When we look at the Minister of Mining, we feel disappointed for a number of reasons, particularly how he handled the issue of KCM and Mopani. Instead of, we are all aware that government is in conflict, they are in court. Government is in court against KCM or against Vedanta, who are the majority shareholders of KCM. We are all aware of that. We are also aware that for the past 2.5 years, the liquidator has been running the mine. The liquidator has been running the mines. And so, if a new government comes in place, first of all, they are bound by the obligations which the previous government under the PF administration engaged in. So it doesn't matter how bad the decisions the previous government engaged in, the job of the new government is to try and manage the situation for the benefit of the nation. It is not about pointing fingers and engaging in a blame game, no. But we saw that the Minister of Mines, the first time he convened a meeting with the liquidator, he decided to bring along the entire media to that meeting in Kitwe, and he was disparaging the liquidator in front of other stakeholders. You cannot build a sustainable relationship which will manage this critical issue if you begin to point fingers and disparage other people, especially a person as important as the liquidator, someone who has been running the affairs of a mine for more than 2 years. You need to sit down with them. You need to work with them. Even if the person committed a crime, obviously that crime is not murder. They committed a crime. If they committed a crime, that's fine. Work with them first. Try to resolve the bigger issue which will affect the entire nation. After you resolve that issue now, you can then go back to that person and say, Bona Liquidator, there is this criminal offense that was committed. But you cannot start by harassing the critical person who is needed for you to resolve the KCM issue. You start dragging them to court. That is not thinking properly. That is not thinking properly. He was supposed to put the interests of the nation first before the individual interests of trying to apprehend and arrest that particular individual. At the end of the day, as a leader, you always face conflicting decisions. You find that you need to make this decision, you also need to make that decision. And as a leader, you need to weigh between the two. Which one is the bigger picture here? And saving the mine, saving KCM is more critical than prosecuting the liquidator, Mr. Milingo. Even if we prosecute the liquidator, Mr. Milingo, and we send him to prison, then tomorrow KCM wins the case, or rather Vedanta wins the case against Zambia, and we need to compensate Vedanta billions of dollars for grabbing the mine away from them. How does that benefit us? How does putting Mr. Milingo into prison benefit the nation when we have lost the mine? It doesn't. So that is why, for us, we appealed to the UPND administration from the very beginning, and President Hakainde Hichilema, from the very beginning, to say, look, in the management of national affairs, with this mandate, this overwhelming mandate which the Zambian people have given you, put emotions aside. Put emotions aside. Always put the national interest first. When you do that, you always make decisions which will benefit the common Zambian, as opposed to you putting your personal emotions ahead of what is in the interest of the nation at large. So we are disappointed with the Minister of Mines regarding that handling of that matter, and in our view, he does not deserve to be in that position. Minister of Tourism, Mr. Skarinda, we were very disappointed with him because of a statement that he made that Livingstone and the hotels in Livingstone, the only people that should work there, that will be allowed to work there, are people from within Livingstone. People from within Livingstone are the only ones who will be allowed to work in hotels in Livingstone. And his justification was that he is trying to empower the local people. But what about the other Zambians who come from the other parts of the country? The moment a senior government official starts thinking like that, then you know that the country is not in safe hands, because that is the starting point of dividing the country. Can you imagine a situation where someone comes from Kaputa in Luapula, and they sent their children to Fairview, they did their training in hospitality and hotel industry. The person gets a job in Livingstone, and the moment they go to report, after the parents celebrate that their daughter has finally gotten a job, the daughter goes to report in Livingstone, and they are sent back that they cannot work in Livingstone because they don't come from Livingstone. They don't come from Livingstone. They are not an indigenous person from within Livingstone. How would that parent in Kaputa look at their neighbor who comes from Livingstone? Would they welcome their neighbor? They wouldn't. The same applies to anyone from any other part of Zambia. So the moment you start dividing the nation and start saying that no, only people from this area will work in that area, next thing, the Lambas, who are the owners of Copperbelt, will say no other tribe should work in the mines. And then you are splitting the country. So we demanded for the minister to retract his statement and issue an apology to the nation regarding this matter, and so far he has not. And we are in the process of approaching the court to declare the minister's statement unconstitutional. We are going to file a lawsuit in this regard, either this week or next week. Coming to the Minister of Sports, ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that our national team has not been performing well for some time now. And with the change of government, we were hopeful that the new government will find a way of revitalizing our sports. And so we were disappointed when the first statement that the Minister of Sports made was that the current Kamanga administration should involve Karusha Warrior in the administration of FAS. We all know of the rivalry which has been there between the Kamanga camp and the Karusha Warrior camp. And for a government, you are supposed to be a neutral arbitrator. You are not supposed to appear to undermine anybody. The moment you start making statements like the Kamanga administration should involve Karusha Warrior in the management of FAS, you are essentially saying that Kamanga has failed to manage FAS on his own, and therefore Karusha needs to come and manage FAS with Kamanga. And the moment you do that, you are creating conflict. Even if that is what is happening on the ground, you are supposed to do it privately. You are supposed to call the first president, Mr. Kamanga, you sit him on the table. You call Mr. Karusha Warrior, you sit on the table, just the three of you and yourself as minister, and you talk about ways we can improve our football. You should not do things for the public gallery. The UPND administration should desist from doing things for the public gallery. If they really want to resolve problems, they need to resolve problems behind closed doors and only announce to us the results of that resolution. So that is our issue with the Minister of Sports. The Minister of Local Government, of course, his view that cadres need to be brought back is a disappointment, together with the Minister of Home Affairs. And therefore, we don't have confidence in those two as well. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to go to item number 10 on the issue of checks and balances, which is the failure to control cadreism. We have seen that despite the nice words coming from the president, cadreism has still continued in a lot of markets. There are still a lot of markets which are under the control of UPND cadres. People are still being attacked. And for the first time, we saw a police officer being assaulted in Kamara by UPND cadres. Even under the PF administration, where cadreism was very, very high, where even ourselves we were attacked in Cairo Lodge, we did not see a police officer being hacked with a panga. Even when those cadres went to Central Police and harassed the police officers at Central Police, we did not see a police officer being hacked in the head with a panga. That only happened under the leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema. A police officer was hacked in the head in uniform with a panga by a UPND cadre. And you know what the worst part of it was? The worst part of it was that the president did not condemn that. He did not publicly condemn that. We remember that under the PF, when a cadre incident like that happened, there was some condemnation that came. Although we all know that that condemnation was not genuine. But even fake condemnation is better than total silence. So the least that President Hakainde Hichilema would have done after a police officer in uniform was hacked by a UPND cadre in Kamara was to condemn that incident. Even if he doesn't mean it with all his heart, he should have condemned it. So on that basis, we are extremely disappointed regarding the failure by President Hichilema to address the issue of cadreism in this country. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to go to item number 11 under the heading of checks and balances, which is the refusal by the president to declare his assets. We have seen that the president has perfected the art of denying responsibility. He has done it on the presidential jet, and he is doing it on the declaration of assets. He is running away from responsibility and giving it to ECZ and saying, me, I declare to ECZ. But that declaration is yours. So in the interest of transparency, in the interest of accountability, if we are demanding that you declare assets, your assets, because you are a president now, you are a public officer, you shouldn't come up with other counter arguments and start saying, no, what about the other candidates? No, what about President Lungu? No, what about that one? Stop giving excuses. Just declare your assets. If you have nothing to hide, declare your assets. It is your assets. Even the declaration that you gave to ECZ, it is you who prepared it. So if people are demanding that you declare your assets, why not just share your declaration with the media and say, those are my assets and liabilities? Why should it take us to go to court? As we speak right now, we are in the Constitutional Court, trying to compel the president to declare his assets. So it shows that the president is not as transparent, he's not as accountable as he portrays himself to be. It seems that he came to the leadership of this nation with a particular agenda, which we don't know about. And it is incumbent upon people like yourselves as the media and people like ourselves as the opposition to hold the president accountable. To hold the president accountable. If we don't do that, then the president's hidden agenda of running the country will come to fruition at the expense of the nation at large. We don't know what that agenda is. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to go to the second last item, which is the 12th item under the banner of checks and balances. And this is failure to provide policy direction on Mopani and KCM matters. Ladies and gentlemen, as we opened our press briefing at the beginning, we spoke about the balance of payment position, where we look at exports versus imports, and how that feeds into the exchange rate, how that feeds into the entire health of the economy. And we emphasize that our major export is minerals, copper in particular, and cobalt, isn't it? And some of the major mining companies are Mopani and KCM. And when you look at these two mines, they are issues which require to be resolved. When you look at Mopani, President Hakainde Hichilema, when he was in opposition, was against the decision by government to buy out Grenco and acquire Mopani under that loan arrangement. They were against that. They were very much against that. Now that they are in government, everybody in the mining sector is waiting for their pronouncement on the issue of Mopani. They are waiting for their pronouncement to say, since you, President Hichilema, you were against this purchase of Mopani by government, now that you are the president, are you going to reverse this decision, or you are going to continue with it? Without the government pronouncing its position on that matter, there is uncertainty in the mining industry, because people don't know. They don't know whether the UPND administration is in support of the decision that the PF administration made to acquire Mopani from Grenco, or they are not in support, whether they will reverse it. And for as long as there is uncertainty, people cannot invest in an industry where there is uncertainty. So we want the president to pronounce himself on this matter and say, oh, me, since I'm president now, I think we'll go this direction. We'll continue with the decision that was made by the previous administration and we'll keep Mopani. Or no, me, I'll reverse. Whichever direction, we need the proper policy direction from President Hichilema. Coming to the issue of KCM, we are all aware about the ongoing legal battles that are in court between government and the Danta. And we are all aware of the position that President Hichilema held when he was in the opposition. He was against the liquidation of KCM. And now that he's president, what is his position? Is he still against the liquidation of KCM, in which case he's going to withdraw that case from court? Or he's now changed his mind, he's now going to be in support of the liquidation? He needs to provide guidance. Without providing that guidance, the entire mining industry is in disarray. And for as long as the mining industry is in disarray, there can be no investment there. Even our productivity is undermined. So our demand, this one is not a request, because it's an important national issue, very critical. Our demand to the president is that he needs to pronounce himself on these two issues, Mopani and KCM. He should not keep quiet on this matter. His keeping quiet is a sign of indecision. And we want a decided president if this country's economy is going to be turned around. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to address the 13th and last item under the heading of checks and balances to the UPND administration, which is the haphazard approach in the fight against COVID-19. Haphazard approach by the UPND administration in the fight against COVID-19. We are all aware that the third wave of COVID killed a lot of people. I'm sure each one of us has a relative or friend who died during the third wave. And we are all aware that after the third wave, the demand for vaccines has been very high. It has been very high. Whenever a batch of whether AstraZeneca or any other vaccine comes, the queues are long and tedious. And so we have always appealed, not only to the UPND administration, but also to the PF administration before, that what we need to do as a nation is increase the vaccination level. Currently, we've got less than 3% of our total population being vaccinated. And the only way we can achieve higher levels of vaccination is by procuring vaccines on the world market. And a dosage of vaccine is less than $4. Less than $4. And yet the cost of treating a critically ill COVID-19 patient is in excess of $20,000. So it is cheaper and economical for the government to procure vaccines and prevent critical illness when the fourth wave comes, as and when it does. But we have seen that about 2 days ago, President Hichilema was launching a promotion on people getting vaccines at one of his presses here. And he was doing that despite not procuring big enough quantities of the vaccines. We all saw that in the previous vaccinations, the vaccine runs out when there is still long queues, which means the demand for the vaccine is there. And when the demand is there, what is the point of engaging in further promotion of the vaccine when the demand is already there, when what is lacking is the vaccine? We expected the president to procure the vaccine and make sure it is widely distributed, not only in Lusaka, because so far most of the vaccination is taking place in Lusaka. So we expected the president to buy at least maybe 1 million doses, not that 100,000 that is donated by World Health Organization. That doesn't go anywhere. Just within a day or two, it is finished. So we expected the president to announce to the nation the procurement of, say, 1 million or 2 million or 3 million doses of the vaccines distributed to all corners of Zambia. Distributed to all corners of Zambia. If and when a situation comes whereby people are not going to get vaccinated, then the president can now say, no, let us promote the vaccine. But where there are long queues already, and you as the president, you are wasting time promoting a vaccine which already has demand, but there is no supply, then clearly, to us, that is a demonstration of uncoordinated management of national affairs, which is totally regrettable. We expected that with the coming of the UPND government, the quality of management of government affairs will be improved. But unfortunately, we are not seeing much of that. Even basic decisions are not being made. They are not being made. There is a lot of laissez-faire approach from government, which is totally unacceptable. Because the time that the PF left office, this country was on its knees in terms of most governance issues. And the expectation from the people is that whichever government would be elected to take over from the PF would hit the ground running to mend the broken things that the PF left behind. But the people elected the new government, and the new government doesn't seem to be in much hurry attending to the many urgent matters that require to be addressed in this country. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, allow me to address the third major item on the agenda, which is the hacking of our page, our presidential Facebook page, by unknown political opponents. We experienced a hack of our page about 2 weeks ago, and subsequent to that, we engaged some IT people. We recovered the page, but it soon occurred to us that that recovery was not complete. The hackers still had remote access to our page, and within a week after we thought we had fully recovered it, we realized that the hackers again took over completely. And we have engaged a lot of people to help us recover the page. And these include IT companies as well as Facebook itself. I'm happy to announce that so far, in terms of the correspondence we have exchanged with Facebook, they appear to be in the process of restoring the page. The last time we communicated with Facebook, they were requesting for identity documents of the people who were administrators on the page. And those identity documents were emailed to them, and they responded saying they are going to verify the ID documents and that they will respond. So we are hopeful that in the next few days, that verification process will be concluded and that the page will be given back to us in terms of administration. We have noted that there are a lot of unsavory things which the hackers are posting on our page. This is probably done to discredit us, to undermine the checks and balances that we have been providing. And we are only hopeful that with the support of the people and the support of stakeholders such as Facebook, as well as our key stakeholders, this matter will be resolved in the next few days. That is the update on that matter. And lastly, so in the meantime, as we are waiting to recover the president's page, we are using the party page, which is Patriots for Economic Progress page, and that is what we are using to provide checks and balances for the time being. My vice president has just reminded me. Coming to the last item, which is our expectations with regard to the 2022 national budget, which we believe the UPND administration is soon going to unveil. First of all, our appeal to President Hakainde Hichilema and his government is that he needs to take responsibility for the 2022 budget. He needs to take responsibility for the 2022 budget. We saw a statement in the media by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Msokotwani, that the 2022 national budget is going to be a PF budget with a few adjustments by the UPND. And we see that statement as a way of the UPND administration trying to escape their responsibility of being held accountable on the various promises that they made to the Zambian people, and on the basis of which they were elected into office. So already right now, when you ask them why they can't do this or that, their excuse is that they are implementing the PF budget. So they want to spend another 1 year claiming that they are implementing another PF budget. And that is a sign of lack of responsibility. President Hichilema should be responsible and face the nation and tell the nation which promises he is going to be able to deliver and which promises he is not going to be able to deliver. If he is honest with the citizens might understand. They might understand. But if he is going to continue using excuses such as we are implementing the PF budget, then we are not going to have much progress. So in terms of our expectations with regard to the 2022 national budget, obviously most of our expectations should be outlined in the paper alternative budget, which we are going to develop and present to the media, as we have done for the past 5 years. And I must mention that for us, it takes us 2 weeks to develop the alternative budget. And the UPND have been in office for 1.5 months. We don't understand why they should claim that they are going to use the PF budget. Why can't they develop their own budget? 1.5 months is more than enough time. if they are having challenges developing the 2022 national budget, they can always contact us and we can assist. At the end of the day, we would want to contribute to anything that will help this country grow economically, because we are fully aware that when the UPND administration succeeds, when President Hakainde Hichilema succeeds, then the Zambian people at large would have succeeded. And Zambia as a nation would have succeeded too. So wherever the UPND administration feels that they don't have the necessary competence to do certain things, especially things to do with development of the budget, they can always consult us and we can assist. And when we assist, we are not going to announce to the media because that will be a national duty. We just assist them in good faith and we shake hands and we end there. But the bottom line is that we should not have a government which has remained stagnant because they are not able to do certain things, and yet there are people within the economy who can assist them, people like ourselves. So basically, coming to our major expectation of the 2022 budget, we are fully aware that the biggest mistake that the PF administration made in the 10 years that they managed the affairs of this country was to overemphasize charity compared to economic empowerment. They believed so much in social cash transfer compared to economic empowerment loans. When you give someone a 200 kwacha as social cash transfer, someone who is able-bodied, next month again they will need that 200 kwacha again. And that other month they will need that 200 kwacha again. And where are you getting that money? You are getting that money from a citizen who is productive, who is able to contribute tax to the treasury, isn't it? So you are putting the burden of supporting the majority of Zambians on the few Zambians who are productive in the economy, instead of you using resources to empower more Zambians so that more Zambians can be productive and contribute to the tax pool, so that you can have the majority Zambians carrying the minority Zambians. At the moment, we have the minority Zambians who are in gainful employment as well as gainful business carrying the majority Zambians through social cash transfer. So our appeal to President Hakainde Hichilema as well as the UPND administration as they develop their 2022 national budget is that they need to shift resources from charity towards economic empowerment. And that can only be done by reducing social cash transfer and increasing economic empowerment loans. People want loans which they can use to start small businesses. And when you go out there in the compounds or in the villages, you ask people how much they need for them to start a business, they will tell you they want a 1,500 kwacha, a 2,000 kwacha, a 3,000 kwacha, just small amounts. But when they start a business using that amount, they will be able to pay back that loan within 6 months to a year. And then you create a revolving fund. That money is then used to assist more Zambians. And they are paying back that money. And those people have remained economically active. They are even able to contribute to the tax pool of the nation. So by so doing, we are developing the entire nation, as opposed to having the current situation where the majority of the people are being carried by the minority of the citizens who are able to contribute to the tax pool. So that is our biggest expectation when it comes to the 2022 national budget. But please go and tell President Hichilema to stop giving excuses with regard to the 2022 national budget, where he's saying it is again going to be a PF budget with a bit of contribution from UPND. If he is not able to develop a budget of his own, he can call on us. We've got 5 years experience developing alternative national budget, and we are going to assist him and his government free of charge. We are not going to announce to the media. We are not going to tell anybody. It will just be our contribution to this country which we love so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. We will take questions. Thank you. No questions.
Okay, there's a question. Oh, yeah.